Good evening, church. How many of you like it if you have somebody that can help you when you're in trouble? You ever get to that point where you really need somebody who can help? Yesterday we got a call. It was sort of one of those not early in the evening, but not very, very late in the evening. And it was from John Mark saying, the car has died. It's in Newport. And what do you do? And so Dwayne sent out a message, and pretty soon Ryan Wegorn sent back, what can we do to help? I thought, wow, that's really nice. Well, the boys got on YouTube, and one of them got underneath the car, and they saw a wire underneath the transmission that needed to be put back in. And Dan, you'd be pretty proud of them. I thought, that's okay. They looked like they'd been under a car, and they got the car home. But, every now and then you just stop and you say, it's really nice if you got somebody in your corner. And that's what we are looking at today. As we look at this man, he's Shaftesbury. His real name is Anthony Ashley Cooper. He lived quite a while ago, and he had the title of a British aristocracy, something like that, Lord Shaftesbury. And they were to meet him on a train. Somebody was sent to go and pick him up as he would step off the train. And the guy said, well, how will I know who he is? And they said, look for the tall man who will be helping someone. Now, that's a hard order to give somebody. Sure enough, there's this man coming off the train, carrying his suitcases in one hand and 3 bundles of a working lady in his other hands. And they knew who he was. Would it be nice if somebody could say that of you? Well, I'm going to meet him at the airport. How do I know who he is? Well, look for the guy or the lady who's helping someone else. And if you just think about that for a second in this church, you'll quickly think of a few. I can think of a few who'd be doing that. I know that if I was meeting a plane from Panama, and I was looking for Dalise, and I'd never seen her before, I would looking for the lady who's helping someone else, and you'll know that to be true. And so it's wonderful to be in a congregation where we have people in our corners, but the reason we do is because we know that God helps us. And so I want you to go to one of my readings this week, 2 Chronicles, chapter 14. We'll look at one verse in verse 14 in chapter 14 and one verse in chapter 15. We'll get 1 point in chapter 14 and 3 points from chapter 15. The one in chapter 14 is you rely on God. If you rely on God, He will help you. Now, obviously, the same is true in each one of these things. If you don't rely on God, He will not help you. And so here is the scripture. And by the way, if you wonder who that guy is, that's Howard Norton. He taught me so much many years ago on the life and works of a preacher, just private conversations that I had with him on how do you talk with people in different situations. And this is what I gain here in 2 Chronicles 14, verse 11. And Asa cried to the Lord, his God, O Lord, there is none like you to help between the mighty and the weak. Now what's happening is Asa is faithful. His grandfather wasn't very faithful, and so there was a lot of bad blood between him and the neighbors where they had conquered the Israelites a little bit. And one of them had gone and made an alliance with the Egyptians. And there was a massive army 25 miles southwest of Jerusalem ready to attack the Israelites. And he appealed to God. He says, God, what must I do? This huge army together with the Egyptians, had 350 chariots, apart from a multitude of soldiers. It was an impossible battle. There was no way that he could win because of what his grandfather Rehoboam had done. But Asa was a good man. If you look at some of your Psalms, you can recognize Asa there. And Asa cried to the Lord, his God, O Lord, there is none like you to what? Help. I need help. I'm going to cry to the Lord. Cry to anybody else if you want to, like his grandfather did, and bad things are going to happen. Cry to the Lord, and good things are going to happen. Every now and then things in our lives gets tough. I've been talking about that a little bit. I mentioned it just in passing this morning as well. As you get older, life gets tougher. It's more real, and you have to deal with it a little bit differently. And so who do you turn to? Between the mighty and the weak, help us, O Lord our God, for we what? We rely. And that's the important thing. James chapter 1, about verses 5 through 8 says, don't ask God for something unless you're going to believe it 100%. If you doubt it all, God's not going to answer that prayer. You have to pray relying on God, knowing that your prayer requests are before God. Every single prayer that you make goes before God. Every single time you ask God for help, He hears you. And He does respond and He does answer. The devil has only one job, to prevent you from asking. That's all he's got to do, to prevent you from asking. You know, as my children started to leave the house and grow up, I realized there's less and less power I have to control them, but more and more time I have to talk to God about them. I'm just thinking about some of those of you who've had children move on recently into college. There's not much you can do, right? But when I say pray, I don't mean there's not much. That is huge. And it should settle you down. It should calm you down, as it did me in those years that I had to pray like that. Help us, O Lord our God, for we rely on you, and in your name we have come against this multitude. O Lord, you are our God. Let not man prevail against you. I mean, that is so succinctly put. Well, the reason I got that picture there of Howard Norton, I think he was my hermeneutic professor in graduate school. But I would go and pick him up and volunteer to pick him up from the airport and drive through peak hour traffic so that I could have more and more time to visit with him. And the question comes about, how do you talk to somebody when they are aging and they've lived a faithful life all their lives, and near the end of their lives, their memory starts to go? Well, you've got to be worried, because how many of you who are young right now remember the promises God has made? God has made so many promises to us, and we remember them. But as we get older, it's possible, especially just before we pass, that we'll forget a lot of those promises. Is that correct? Do you all agree? But will God ever forget those promises He's made to you? Will God ever forget those promises? No, He'll never forget, right? And so we rely on God, not because of who we are, but because of who God is. It's like John Smith said to us last week, do you really rely on yourself to change, or do you understand that the Holy Spirit will change you? It's God who changes us. It's God who answers our prayers. So God helps if, number one, we rely on Him to help us. Number two, God helps us if we are with God. He is with us. So it's possible for us not to be with God. It's very easy, in fact. We just have to worship something else, or put our attention somewhere else, or get caught up in something else. And then God can no longer be with us. And that can be as simple as fear. Now, we talked about what's happening with Nicaragua, and I saw that, and I mentioned that to Tom just now, they have a 1,000,000% inflation rate right now. And then I don't know if you are aware of the mass shooting that's going on in the country right now in Florida. But these are all things that can pull our attention and get us focused and get us away from where we really need to be. And that is with God. There's so many things, but it doesn't help to focus on them. Focus on faith, and everything's going to be okay. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 2, introduction says this, and he went out to meet Asa and said to him, hear me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. So there's the two tribes of the south, the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. These are the ones that we are talking about. And this is what a prophet who went to Asa said. The Lord is with you while you are with Him. The Lord is with you while you are with Him. There in Genesis chapter 28, verse 20 through 22, you see the same thing. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me, and then you look at the end, God is with, and throughout I've underlined, with me, I will give bread to me, I will clothe me, will be my God, and so on. and he says, I will give a full tenth to you. And that is something that he got from his father, and he just passed it on. So how can we know we are with God? Many years ago, this young man, his name was William, he was only 16 years old when he left his house, and he was heading for New York, and he went onto one of these steamboats traveling towards New York. And he talked to the captain. The captain wanted to know, why is this young boy, he's dressed well, looks like he comes from a good home, why is he leaving home? And he said, my father is just too poor to keep me in the house. And so I need to move out and make my way in life. And I only have two trades. I'm a candle maker and I'm a soap maker. It's the only two things I know how to do. And so this is what the old wise captain said to him. First he kneeled and he prayed earnestly, and then he advised this, and I'm going to read it for you. Someone will soon be the leading soap maker in New York. It can be you as well as someone else. Be a good man. Give your heart to Christ. Pay the Lord all that belongs to him. Make an honest soap. Give a full pound. That's a full pound of soap, right? And I'm certain you will be a prosperous and rich man. And so, this young guy goes into the city and he starts to make soap. And he gives a full pound. But of the first dollar that he makes, he gives God a tenth. And as he starts to get more and more money, he gives God still the tenth. And eventually he was making so much, he started to give God 2 tenths, then 3 tenths, then 4 tenths, then 5 tenths, and from there, he gave God his entire salary. Anybody want to guess who that man was? William Colgate. Isn't that crazy? Some of you got it. Just coming in there and saying, that's pretty good advice. I'm going to do my very, very best, but I'm going to do this with God. And God sees him through. And we can look at this as history and say, well, yeah, I can see how that works. But how many of us can actually walk with God like that? And so it shows, if we're with God or not with God. And every now and then, the elders will put challenges before us. And every time that happens, it shows where we are, whether we're going to go with it or not. We had a very rich discussion, and it's an open floor, and we've got a lot of good ideas going around. But it's interesting to see how we as a group mold with each other. And at the end of the day, we want to give God the glory in everything we do. And so that's the ultimate aim. Are we seeking our way, or are we seeking to give God his way? Thirdly, seek God, and he will be found by you. So we go back to that verse, and you'll see there I've highlighted the middle section now. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But do you see the reason I really like the scripture, right? It's so many ifs. If you do this, then God will do this. If you do this, God will do this. And the last one we'll see just now, if you don't do this, then God's going to do that. Daween and I were watching a documentary of these whooper swans. They leave Iceland. 12,500 whooper swans leave Iceland as winter comes. And then they go to their summer vacation place, which is Ireland. And Ireland's not much better, but to them it's just enough to really, really be nice. And it was interesting seeing how these whoopers would get ready, and the little chicks had to get strong. And no sooner would these little chicks be strong enough to take off, and they would take off on a 1,000-kilometer journey. It worked out to be 884 miles. So that's more than 1,000 kilometers. And they would fly for at least a minimum of 13 hours. And if there was any bad weather, they were in a lot of trouble. It could take them up to 3 days to get there. Yes, their wings are 100 times stronger than a muscle of a human. They're very, very, very strong. But can you imagine how eager those whooper swans are to see Ireland? And the Irish people claim those swans as their own. They just love to hear that noise, that the whooper swan. I listened to it on the internet and also on that video. I think I've I tried to footnote the URL is right in the top there if anybody wants to go and see this little video. We watched it on PBS, and it was really nice. But the idea of them being over that sea, there's nowhere to land. They have left the shore, there's no way of going back. There's bad weather going, but they've got to keep going. They've got to keep going. And that sort of reminds me of times when we seek God. We really, really, really need God. Not ultimately just when we leave this world and we're going towards heaven, because that's going to be luxurious. We're going to be carted there by an angel. An angel's going to take us, so that's not even a challenge. But when we actually in this world and things are tough, even this day I spoke to a few of you about difficult things that you're facing. At times, so difficult, I just shake my head. I don't know. I really don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the answer is. But I do know one thing, God knows the answer. And it's when we have our backs up against the wall, that we've got nowhere else to turn, that's when we can see God and we can know, I'm going to find land. It's going to be okay. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know where this is going to happen. I just know God is going to see me to the other side. It's going to be okay. So that's the good news. God helps us if we rely on Him, if we're with Him, if we seek Him. But, here's the but. And in every lesson, I suppose, there has to be, a caveat where we say we've got to look at this thing differently. But He will forsake us if we forsake Him. God's never going to turn His back on us. But if we turn our back on Him, He's got no option. And I say it so easily, God will never turn His back on us. But I do know through history, there's been times that God did turn His back on His people, but it was to discipline them. So let's look at this last one. But if you forsake Him, He will forsake you. But if you forsake Him, He will forsake you. How do you forsake God? Maybe I put too much credibility with the power of the church. When I say the power of the church, I mean us getting together. But I have got so much invested in this body. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25 makes it a bit clearer. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. It's so easy to do it. It's so easy to forsake the Lord. But if you've got a family that holds on to you, that's sticky, then it's a little bit more difficult. And I think this church is sticky. I think if you say, I kind of like you, and you come closer, this church is going to hold on to you. It's going to start grabbing onto you, and it's going to pull you in. And you know why? Because I think we all need that. I think we need that of each other. I know I need that. I need to feel this family. And Gideon, as we talked about this morning, it's all family, isn't it? It's all family. All the little things that I notice about the church, it's because we are family. I noticed Nate, coming to church this morning, and I figured out how far he has to drive, and then some of our own members like Joel, being here and realizing he starts. And then this morning I had a family a prayer with Joel as he starts college tomorrow. This is how it works. We're all together in this. And we can't forsake the assembling of ourselves. So why do we? Why do some people forsake the assembling of themselves? Here's one guy's rendition on this. And it's about the day. God, you chose the wrong day. You see, God, it's like this. We could attend church more faithfully if your day came at some other time. You have chosen a day that comes at the end of a hard week. And we're all tired out. Not only that, but it's the day following Saturday night. Now, this is a big one in this country. And Saturday night, it's not just this country, it's all over. I've had to remind myself all over the world, go to sleep early Saturday night. And Saturday night is the one time when we feel that we should go out and enjoy ourselves. Often it is after midnight when we reach home, and it is almost impossible to get up on Sunday morning. And you must realize that you have picked the very day on which the morning paper takes the longest to read, the day when the biggest meal has to be prepared. we'd like to go to church, and we know that we should, but you have simply chosen the wrong day. And yes, you can look at it and say, whoa, and gasp, and but that's the truth. That's as easy as it happens. It's just people get caught up, and then they skip one Sunday, then they skip another one, and then it becomes easier and easier. And we've just got to realize, that's just not going to cut it. So before we sing our invitation song, just look at this again. God is here to help you. He's going to help you if you will rely on Him with every single part of you. So as you look at the invitation song, look at the things that you really need in your heart. Look at the things that you're struggling with, things that only you and God know, or maybe some people very close to you know. But rely on God. And then make sure that you're with God. And it's very, very clear if you're with God. He gives you a lot of opportunities. It could be a poor person that He sends your way this week. But are you with God? Are you doing what God would be doing in this world? And then seek God, not just the bad times, but every single day. I've told you so many times how refreshing my day is when I start with seeking God first thing in the day. And then finally, the last thing, the warning, do not forsake God. Well, if you're subject to the gospel invitation, if you want to be a new creature, there's a very simple way to become a new creature. Make sure that you are buried with Christ. You die with Christ in baptism, you're buried with Christ in baptism, and you resurrect to walk a new life with Christ. And if there's anything in your life that's holding you back right now,